Hello everyone. Welcome to AgilePoint product briefing for the year 2025. Over the next couple of hours, I'm going to walk you through some of the core features of the AgilePoint platform, specially highlighting some of the features which have been added since the last briefing. Our last briefing was on top of AgilePoint version 9, and since then, a lot of generative AI, agentic AI, as well as developer productivity features have been added to the platform, which I plan to cover as part of today's demo. So without further wait, I'm going to switch to a private browser window over here, and we are going to start by spinning up a new trial tenant for AgilePoint. In order to save time, I've already sent myself an invitation, and the first question it is asking me is, what kind of identity provider do I want to use for my tenant? Now, AgilePoint supports the concept of bring your own identity with more than 15 plus industry standard identity providers supported out of the box, the likes of Entra ID, Google, Salesforce, Okta, Ping Federate, SiteMinder, etc. For those of you who do not have an already existing identity provider, you can always use the inbuilt one called AgilePoint ID, and that's what we are going to use for today's demo. I'm going to get started by picking up a username, password, provide the job title, company name, I'm going to just put the username for now, and a phone number. And go ahead and click register. Now what happens behind the scene is it will start spinning up some services for my tenant as well as provision the required databases. Now this process can take anywhere from 35 to 40 seconds. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the environment as well as the scenario I'm going to build today. AgilePoint is available in 3 different editions. AgilePoint NX for on-premises, which can be installed in customer's network. AgilePoint NX for private cloud, which can be a customer-hosted private cloud or AgilePoint hosted private cloud. And AgilePoint's multi-tenant SaaS offering, which is called AgilePoint On Demand. Now, across all these 3 editions, the source code base is exactly the same. So you can anytime move from one edition to another edition as per your convenience. For today's demo, I'm going to use an AgilePoint hosted cloud environment. I have a couple of virtual machines in NLB which auto scales based on load, and for database, I'm using Amazon RDS. Now the same functionality is available in Azure as well. Now this is a true multi-tenant system. So as you can see over here, there is a shared hardware on which the AgilePoint services are running, but each customer still gets their own isolated database where their data resides. So it is GDPR compliant, customer owns the data, and not for a split second data ends up in a shared place. So it's completely secure from that perspective. Now today we are going to build a warranty claim application for a mobile accessory store where a customer can log into the system and say there is a problem with the accessory and ask for a warranty claim to be processed. Now here is the overall process which I'm going to build. So customer can log into the system. We'll call a SOAP service to check the status of the warranty. It can either be rejected. In that case, a rejection notification should be sent out. It can be approved because everything looks good, and we have to still update the backend systems, order management system as well as payment system. Or it could go in a pending status where it needs a human approval, and that's what human approval step is for. It still can go for approval and rejection after that. And I'm going to use this as a base to generate my application later on. So let's go back to the PPT over here. Now, as far as integrations are concerned, I'm going to use a whole lot of integration for today's demo. I'm going to use AgilePoint data entity to manage the warranty claim requests as well as my disbursement or product replacement requests. I'm going to use Office 365 as product catalog, OpenAI as an LLM agent to analyze customer feedback, Salesforce for order management, Amazon machine learning for AI-driven process routing using an AI agent, Microsoft WCF for writing the SOAP service, SQL Server for reporting and dashboarding, and Google Maps for maps and location services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to my environment, and as you can see, I've been redirected to the portal homepage over here. Now, before I get started, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the portal. It's a 100% web-based experience. There's no client-side component. And what you see on the screen is a vanilla home screen, and later on you see how this changes as I start building few applications. Now, before we get started, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the modules. Work Center, this is the end user area where end users can submit new requests, work on their tasks, consume reports, set up their vacation schedules, etc. Manage Center is an admin and power user area where admins and power users can manage the runtime instances of the applications, and admins can even manage the permissions of the user or create connections to external systems. App Builder, this is where we are going to spend most of our time today, is used by app designers to build the applications. Data Entity, AgilePoint supports the concept of bring your own data source where your data tables can reside in your existing SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle tables, or a SharePoint list, or a Salesforce entity as well. However, for those customers who do not have that, we provide you a browser-based entity designer where you can design your own data store along with relationships without having to write any complex SQL queries, and that's what Data Entity is. Page Builder. Now, just a minute back, I mentioned that this is the vanilla home screen which comes out of the box. Using Page Builder, you can create your own landing pages, your own portal experiences. Analytics Center for reporting and dashboarding. App Store for downloading quick start templates. Settings to enforce organization-wide policies, so it is a governance module. Now, before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go to user profile. And I'm going to get started by changing the username over here. I'm going to select my name. And as you can see right now, the mobile QR code is not visible. And we'll see how it changes as I start configuring my tenant. So I'm going to go to settings next. Now, I might be one of those companies which does not want to create a whole landing page in Page Builder. I might want to just change basic logo on the portal as well as the illustration image and the company name. I can always do that from this page. Now, if I didn't know how to do that, I can always go and ask AgilePoint's inbuilt AI assistant called Aria. So I'm going to go to my Scratchpad and I'm going to copy one of the questions from here. So if I don't know where to go and make this change, I can say, how do I change the branding of the AgilePoint portal? And what Aria is going to do is, Aria is going to give me a step-by-step instruction on how it can be changed. So it is going to tell me go to settings module and perform these actions, and it gives me a reference article as well. Now I already know what to do, so I'm going to go in and say name of the company is Waxo. I'm going to upload a logo. I'm going to also change the illustration image to match a mobile store. And go ahead and click Save. Now the effect of this is if I open this in a new tab, you can see my home page now. The logo has changed, the illustration image has changed, as well as the company name has changed as well. So the branding changes are working now. I can go to manage modules. Next, I can manage what modules are enabled for my organization. So if I wanted to take away a certain module, for example, App Store or Collaboration Center, I can always do that at an organization level. I can go to Work Center and there are literally dozens of settings which I can personalize as per my company's organization policy. Maybe I want to disable certain actions, so I can do it at a global level. If I go to App Builder under Common, Settings, you can control things like whether we want to allow collaborative development, multiple users working on the same application, or whether we want to enable, disable use of GenAI within the environment. If I go to Process Builder, I can control things such as whether we support BPM and properties on the activity or not. If I go to eForm Builder, there are a whole lot of properties over here as well. For example, I can enable, disable use of JavaScript or CSS in my application. I can say, show my developers the generated JSON view as well. Or I might turn on the performance monitor on the form, or I might, if I'm one of those companies which prefers to enforce a global level branding across all my applications, I can upload a global level CSS. In that case, most likely I would have taken ability to inject custom CSS at form level. Now, similarly, I can set up permissions for data entity, page builder, analytics. We'll see some of them later on. If I go to mobile right now, go to QR code configuration, I do not want my users to be asked to enter complex URLs or pick authentication types while using the mobile device. I can always go and generate a QR code. And the effect of this is if I open now any user's profile, the QR code would be visible right within the user profile itself. So as you can see, now the QR code is visible over here. Lastly, I'm going to go to administration. If you remember, we started with AgilePoint ID, but oftentimes companies have multiple authentication providers which they might have got through various acquisitions, and you can always enable multiple authentication providers in your environment. To give you an idea, I'm going to switch to a different browser window over here. In my other tenant, I have multiple Salesforce identity providers and Microsoft Entra ID providers enabled already in this case. Now, while using third-party authentication providers, I have flexibility of saying synchronize user profiles as soon as the user logs into the system, so I don't have to manage it. I can always obviously synchronize it as a backend job as well if I want it. Now I'm going to go back to my environment. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disable sync user email IDs because I'm going to use the same email ID for all my users in this case. Next, we are going to onboard few users. I can always go to this tab and download an Excel sheet, fill it out, upload it, and it will create all those users in bulk for me and mail out the passwords. But since I have to only create a couple of users, I'm going to go to Manage Center and do it from there. So now in Manage Center, I'm going to pick my first username. Let's call this user Citizen Developer. For email ID, I'm going to go back to my Scratchpad and copy the email ID. For manager, I'm going to make myself the manager. Now I can set this user's language preference. Now user can change it himself as well by going to the user profile page. So I'm going to leave it as English for now. I can specify various social IDs like Microsoft Teams ID or phone number as well so that they can interact through those channels. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now, next it is asking me which role does this user belong to. AgilePoint has a very comprehensive role-based access control system. Out of the box, we already provide you 5 roles: administrators, application designer, runtime manager, citizen developer, and users, but you can create as many custom roles as you want. In this case, I'm going to use the out of the box one called citizen developer. It is asking me whether I want to add this user to any group. I'm going to go ahead and say no for now. Finish. Now I'm going to add a second user. Let's call this user developer. For email ID, I'm going to use the same email ID. For manager, I'm going to use my name as the manager. Go ahead and click next. Now this time I'm going to add this one to application designer role. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And thirdly, I'm going to add last user, a QA user. Let's call this user quality analyst. For email ID, I'm going to use the same email ID so that I receive the password. On that manager, I'll mark myself as the manager, and just for the sake of it, I'm going to say this user has language preference set to Japanese. And I'm going to leave this user in the bare minimum access right level. I'm going to go ahead and click next and click finish. Now at this point of time, if I go to my other browser window over here in my mailbox, you can see I've started receiving passwords for these users. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a different browser window and I'm going to navigate to AgilePoint portal in this window. And I'm going to try to log in. So I'm going to say the QA user is APDemo 25 QA. If I go back to the mailbox over here, I'm going to copy the password which has been mailed out to me. And go ahead and click sign in. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that I'm going to set this user's language preference to Japanese, and you can see the entire experience is now showing up in Japanese, and the permission framework is already working because I put this user in the bare minimum access right level. You can see that he says very limited number of modules over here. Now, user can always go to their profile and change their language preferences as well. And right now, what you're seeing is a left to right kind of a language. The Western language is listed over here. However, AgilePoint has excellent support for Middle Eastern languages as well, right to left. So if I go ahead and set it to Hebrew, now you see, oftentimes when vendor do this, all they would do is change the text orientation. But what is really required is the screen orientation should change as well to right to left. So AgilePoint has that support. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And as you can see now, my logo has moved here, my screen orientation has flipped. So it's very powerful feature and excellent support, as I said, for Middle Eastern countries as well. So I'm going to go ahead and log out, close this browser tab, and we are going to go back to our original browser. Now, while I'm in Manage Center, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of various features available in Manage Center. On the Overview tab, as an administrator, I can see things like how many processes are suspended, how many notifications were not sent out. I can always personalize it as well. I can add various tiles or remove tiles from my home page. How many users are and roles have been created. If I go to Runtime Management, I can manage how my process instances are progressing across processes, tasks, notifications. We are going to look at it later on. If I go to App Management, I can set some permissions. Now later on in my demo, I'm going to create a package. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my developer user access to the package manager module. Now typically I would have done it at a group level. In this case, since I only want to give access to one user, I'm going to go ahead and add him to this role. Similarly, I'm going to give my citizen developer and developer user access to data entity. So I'm going to go ahead and say search for a user called citizen developer, add him here, and then search for a user called developer and add him here as well. And go ahead and click update. Let's go back. Lastly, I'm going to give my developer user access to the page builder module. So let's search for developer user and I'm going to go ahead and give him permission. Let's go ahead and click update. Okay, next we are going to go to shared variables. Now I can define environment-wide variables which can be shared across applications. So I can always go ahead and say add and start adding these. Or if I've already defined it in a different environment, I can go ahead and import. And that's what we are going to do. So I'm going to import three variables: company phone, company email, and company name. I can define global level email templates to be shared across all applications. I can create connections to be shared across all applications. So I'm going to go to access token. Again, I can click on add token. It will list down all 120 plus different systems AgilePoint connects to. And you can select the one which you want to configure. For example, if we select Salesforce, I can enter likes of consumer ID, consumer secret. It supports all the advanced authentication types. As you know, Salesforce uses consumer key and consumer secret. So I can generate an OAuth2 token and it's very secure. So I can say auto recycle this token every 15 minutes so that it never gets compromised. So very secure from that perspective. I'm going to close this. I've already defined it in a different environment. I'm going to go ahead and import them. Now, if I don't know how to do that, I can always go in and ask Arya how to create an access token for Salesforce, for example. Next, we are going to define some form level settings. I can define global level validation masks, mask input patterns, file type restrictions, or a language. Let's go ahead and enable a language for my forms across all my forms. I'm going to say I have users in Japan, so let's enable Japanese. Now this is where you're going to get the first taste of generative AI. Now it is showing me all the common buttons and error messages listed over here which will be used across forms, and I can go ahead and use a translation out to translate these, or I can just say translate with AI. And as you can see now everything is translated in Japanese. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Next, Under access control, AgilePoint has a very comprehensive role-based access control system with a layered governance framework. You are looking at the first layer of security, which is the platform level. So if I drill down into any of these roles, you can see that there are 108 permissions which can be controlled just at platform level. If I put it in edit mode, under access control, you can see more admin kind of permissions, like whether I can create a user or unregister a user or create connections to external systems. Under apps, you can see what kind of permission people belonging to this role have access to at runtime, like initiate a process, roll back a process, cancel a process. What modules they see at the top. If they have access to app builder, what kind of functionality they have access to, whether they can undo checkout files on behalf of someone, or whether they can use generative AI to build applications, whether they can manage settings or organization-wide policies of any of these modules, and what permissions they have in analytics. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill down into citizen developer role and give this role permission to use ARIA as well as use generative AI to generate the application. I can always set up vacation schedules from here. If I have permission, I can even set up vacation schedule for other people. If I go to systems, under session management, because I'm admin, I have access to it. I can see which all users are logged into my system. Remember, I logged in as quality analyst a minute back. System monitor, how many users are registered, how my tenant is performing. Now I have a vanilla tenant over here. It has no running instances, but as I start using it, it will start showing me some usage over here and how the GenAI is being used in my tenant. How many messages have been sent to ARIA, how many applications have been generated. Those are all shown in chart format over here. Now, AgilePoint is an event-driven system. For every action within AgilePoint engine, an event is raised which can be subscribed to. And we have excellent support for webhooks which can publish these events on an external endpoint which other systems can listen to. Now, what I'm going to do is before I log out of this environment, I'm going to go to App Store to give you an idea how you can procure apps from there as well. So I'm going to look for an app called, say, package migration. This app can be used to move your packages from one environment to another. I can go ahead, click on it, look at the process, the form images. I can always change the logic as well once I procure it, read about it, look at a video, and I'm going to go ahead and click add. I'm going to trust this application. Now it is telling me this app has been procured for my organization. I'm going to go ahead and close this. If I go to app builder, all apps, I can see this app is now listed over here. Now I'm not going to give any other user permission to change the design of this application. I'm going to go ahead and log out. Next, I'm going to log in as my other user, which is citizen developer. Let's go to the browser window over here, mailbox, and copy the password. Paste it, sign in. Okay, so you can already see that the permission framework is working because this user doesn't have access to the manage center anymore. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to app builder. If I go to all apps at this point of time, you'll see one thing, that I don't see the deployment package application listed over here. So the application permission framework is already working. Remember, my admin never gave any other user permission to change the design of that application. And let's go back to the home page of App Builder again. Now think of this like a universal application development platform. AgilePoint was always known strong on the process-centric application for more than 2 decades, but over the years, we have added support for non-process-centric applications, data in, data out kind of applications, chatbot applications, mobile applications, AI applications, blockchain applications, etc., which can be all built within one single platform. Now, before I start building my application, the one thing I have to decide is where is my data going to reside. Now, as I mentioned previously, AgilePoint supports the concept of bring your own data source. So if you wanted to keep data in your existing SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle table, or a SharePoint list or library or Salesforce, you can always do that. Data doesn't have to reside in AgilePoint. However, for those of you who do not have a data source, you can always define one using data entity. Now, AgilePoint supports both application first approach, where as you are building the application, your data source would be generated on the fly, or a data first approach, in which case I define my data source first. Now, in past briefings, you have seen the data first approach, but today I am going to use an application first approach because I'm going to build everything using GenAI. But before doing that, I'm going to still give you a quick walkthrough of data entity module so that you are familiar with the functionality. So as you can see, by default, few standard entities have been spinned up for me, few pick lists have been created, and I'm going to go ahead and say, maybe I don't have an entity, I want to add it from scratch. I'm going to select a category, give my record a primary key. So I'm going to say name is the name of the primary key. I can select its type. I'm going to leave it as text for now. I can set up some miscellaneous parameters such as whether this entity should be published, what is the record limit, whether I want to enable audit logging, whether I want to enable import, export of both data as well as metadata from one environment to another environment for this entity, or whether I want to report against it, or I can enable even field level tracking. If a value in a field changes, it will capture that who changed it and from what value it was changed. I'm going to go ahead and say create entity. And as you can see, the name column has been added. There are few standard columns which have been created as well, created by created date, last modified date by last modified date. Now I can build upon this. I can always add additional fields. There are a whole lot of field types which are available. I'm going to say, for example, select date. And let's say add date of birth. I can specify column validations. I can say this should be visible in data tab, enable data tracking, enable reporting against it. And just with points and click without writing any kind of complex SQL queries, I'm now adding more and more columns to the data table over here. Now, if I go to relationship tab, I can always add relationships to other table. I'm going to just add maybe one to an account table in this case. The primary key field which will be used to join the two tables would be account ID. Let's give this field a name and go ahead and click save. As you can see, now the relationship has been created. And if I go to entity diagram, there is a relationship which is there where ID field is tied to the name which I gave for the foreign key over here. I can go to data tab, and over here, if I have permission, I can see the data in this table. If I go to permission, you'll see the second layer of security now working. Previously, we saw the platform level. Now it's the data level security. I have precise control over who are the owners of this entity, meaning who can give other people permission to this entity, who can change the design of this entity, who can view the metadata of this entity at design time. They might not have permission to change the entity, but they can design applications against it, who can report against it, who can read, edit, create, or delete record against these entities. Now, this is a truly hybrid data source. So if I'm going to reuse it across applications, it lists down which forms and processes are using this entity so that I can always do an impact analysis. And since I turned audit trail on, it will capture audit trail both for design time changes as well as runtime changes. I added few columns, so it is showing me audit trail for those. Now, what if I don't want to start from scratch? I have data existing in some existing system and I want to just import data from that system. You can always import data from external systems as well in various formats. So if I go to import entity, we support JSON, XML, Excel. I'm going to use this Excel sheet to show you that idea. So if you see, there is a header row over here and there are few data rows in this. I'm going to go back and locate this sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and click import. Right, pass data out of it. It is suggesting me these are the column names. I can always change it. Now, maybe Excel is showing it as text, but I know that there is a better column type called email for email field and phone for phone. So I can always change as per my requirements. Rest everything looks okay. I'm going to say out of all the columns, process instance ID is my primary key field. And for display name, let's just use the Excel sheet name. For category, let's put it in a category. And I'm going to go ahead and click import. Now what this does is it created the whole table for me, and if I go to data tab, you can see all the records have been imported as well. Now what if I don't know what table to build right now, I don't know which columns to add, I can always use generative AI for this. I can say I want to create a leave request application and I want to generate a data source for that. And it is going to suggest me, typically these are the columns which are going to be added to a leave request table. I can always delete them, rename them, add a few of them. I'm going to move out. Now next we are going to look at the entities page, and you can see a well categorized view of both standard as well as custom entities. There are various views available. You can always change that. If I go to pick list, similar to entities, I can say generate a pick list. Maybe let's say job referral source. Let's go ahead and click generate. It will show me some of the common job referral sources. I can say give it a display name and an internal name, and go ahead and click save. So this referral source along with the values have been created. I can always add more values if I wanted. But remember, this is a pick list. It is going to be shown in the form. Maybe my users in Japanese do not want to see the display names in English. I can always go in and say enable multiple languages. The language I want to enable is Japanese. And next I'm going to translate these. So there is a translate pick list item option over here. I can again use a translation house to do this, or just use AgilePoint's generative AI. So I'm going to say select all of these and translate with AI. And all the values have been translated. My users in Japanese would see this in these fields in Japanese. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now I can always look at the entity relationship diagram as well if I have permission to it. Remember, I gave these two users permission, so I can see the whole database diagram as well. Now what I'm going to do is, before I move out of the data entity module, I'm going to import one pick list, which is going to show me the type of damages which can be done to a mobile accessory. So scratch screen, cracked, foggy, peeling edges is there. And I'm going to import two child tables. My primary table will be created as part of generative AI. Child tables, the logic I would have is that once the warranty claim has been approved, a refund request row would be added to a disbursement table, which can be picked up by the backend disbursement system to process the refund. So I'm going to go ahead and add a disbursement table in this case. And it went ahead and created the table for me. I'm going to give my developer user permission to use this table. And similarly, later on, I'm going to bring in logic that instead of asking for refund, user can ask for a replacement of this product. So I'm going to go ahead and have another table called replace product. And the table has been created, and I'm going to go ahead and give my developer user permission to this as well. Okay, so I'm done with my changes. Now I'm going to go to App Builder and start building my application. So let's say add an app. Now it is going to ask me what kind of application do I want to build. I can build a process-centric application or a non-process application. I'm going to say process-based app. It is asking me the name for the app. I'm going to quickly go to my Scratchpad over here and select the first value over here and say it will be called warranty claim process. As far as language is concerned, AgilePoint is localized in 15 plus different languages. Now keep in mind, this is the design time language. My runtime language can be in any language of my choice. So depending on what I select, the folder names and everything would be shown in that language. I'm going to say I want to stick with default, which is English in my case. I'm going to give it a category, enable collaborative development so that multiple users can work on the same application. Give process model a name. I'm going to use the same name. Next, it is asking me how is this going to be triggered. I can use eForm, which is our built-in form designer. That's what we are going to use today. But we can use external forms like ASP.NET, JSP, PHP, React, Angular. I can use a message or an event such as an incoming email or a file gets dropped to a file system or an event occurring in blockchain or Kafka. It could be a system-to-system orchestration style process with no human intervention. It could be parent-child process. It could be even events occurring in SharePoint or Salesforce. Now, as I said, I'm going to select eForm today and I'm going to give it a theme. Click Next. Now, this is where you will start seeing few changes. Previously, you saw me in past briefings use create process myself option. I created everything from scratch, but now it is giving me an option to use generative AI to build the process model. So I'm going to use that. Now, there are various options available to me. I can build an application based on a prompt where I can enter the intent and it would suggest me what kind of steps should be there in that particular application. But as you know, prompts are mostly suggestive in nature and it would never match my business needs very closely. Whereas if I have defined these processes in a different system or maybe my business analyst has put it in a BPMN kind of a notation, I can always with AgilePoint bring in those existing images or PDFs of the process. So in my case, I'm going to use this image, which is a BPMN image. I'm going to go ahead and say select image option. It could be lying on one of the repositories. In my case, it is on my local file system. So I'm going to select that. Now it is taking that image, sending it to AgilePoint's GenAI endpoint, which will parse data out of it and say, here are the names of the steps and here are the various connections. Again, while it is doing that, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of this process. So user submits the request, goes to the SOAP service. There are three possible outcomes which come out of the SOAP service: rejected, approved, and pending. If it is pending, goes to approval, and there are two possible outcomes. There are two notifications and 3 or 4 system activities which are listed over here. Now for system activities, BPM is not telling me what kind of system activity it is, and AgilePoint will give me an option to choose the best possible match for me. So I'm going to go back and see my parsing of this image has already completed. I can always regenerate it if I'm not happy with this, but in this case, it is going to match exactly the image logic which I had. So I have a start task, which is going to the submit step. Now, as you can see right now from start, there is only one outgoing activity, which is submit. If there were multiple, if it was branching out, I can always select multiple of them as well. Now submit has been detected as a human activity. I can always click on it and change it to a more advanced human activity, but I'm happy with the start task. I can always configure it from here as well. I can add things like participants or enable offline capability, or I can do it later on once I'm in the process modeler. Now, as far as the placeholder activity is concerned, you see over here, its check warranty is a system activity and BPMN is not telling me this the type. So AgilePoint has put a placeholder activity and I can always pick one. Now AgilePoint integrates with more than 120 different line of business systems with more than 1200 process actions available out of the box. I can always go in and choose the one which I wanted to use. In this case, I will go to web services and I know my service is of type WCF service. So I'm going to select that. I can always do it later on in the process modeler at any point of time. For condition, it has done a good job. It has parsed out all the conditions and the outgoing activities. I'm going to just make one small change. I'm going to say move the rejected connector to the top and go ahead and click save. Approval is a standard task, which is fine. For the second decision activity, I'm going to say everything looks good to me, but move the reject to the right and approval to the bottom to match my image. Rejection email, it has detected it as an email because BPMN is telling me this is an email type of activity. For update approval process, now once it has been approved, I want to put the approval decision back into my backend system. In my case, that is data entity. So I'm going to go ahead and update a record. For disbursed claim, I'm going to insert a new record in data entity table so that my backend system can pick it up. So I'm going to pick up create record. For set order status, I'm going to set an order status variable. So I'm going to say update process data activity from common stencil. And lastly, I'm going to go back to my backend system, order management system, and update it, which is in Salesforce in my case. So I'm going to go ahead and say, once everything is done, update the order status back in Salesforce. I'm going to select update records for Salesforce. So I'm done with my changes. I can always delete it, add it, additional steps if I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Next, it is asking me, how do you want to create your UI? Now I can again create the form myself, but in my case, I'm going to use generative AI. And I have a form which my business analyst has already created. And I'm going to switch to another browser window over here. And as you can see, here is the form. I'm going to go ahead and upload this. Now, again, while creating the form, I could have started with a prompt, but AgilePoint has excellent support for existing form templates. So you can use Excel, image, or PDF of any existing form. So I'm going to go ahead and say PDF, locate the PDF, and go ahead and upload it. Now, it's again contacting AgilePoint's GenAI endpoint, which is going to parse all the control types and their labels out of that image. Now, while we are waiting for that, this process takes around 15-20 seconds. You can see my form has a specific layout. This row has 3 controls. This row has only 2 controls. The last column is empty. And then the third row has a text area which spans across all 3 columns. And there are various control types which are used. Some of them are dates, some of them are radio buttons with some possible values. And there is a file upload control in here as well. So if I go back, my form data has been parsed and it is suggesting me few improvements. So if you remember, I have 2 sections over here. It is asking me whether I want to generate it as a tab. I can always put it back as a heading, but I like the tab style, so I'm going to go with it. It has parsed out all the information. The first column is showing me the display name of the control. It matches exactly what was there in the PDF. The second column is showing me the internal ID. The third column is showing me the data type. I can always change it if I want it. And the fourth column is showing me the control type which will be put on the form. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reclassify this a little bit. I'm going to say request number. AgilePoint has a better control for it called sequence number. Now it is also detecting all the required fields for me. So it is saying first name and last name is required, middle name is not. And that's what I have in my PDF. If you say this is required, this is not, and this is required. So doing a good job at that. Phone is detected as phone, email as email, street address as text area. For state, it is telling me it is a drop down and I should provide some possible values. So I'm going to go ahead and say I can either generate with AI or I'm going to say I already have a pick list with this name called USA states. I'm going to go ahead and use that. For zip code, AgilePoint has a better control for it. So I can say use postal code so that I have all built-in validation. For type of damage, remember at the beginning, I did import a pick list called type of damage. It is going to tell me there is a name match. So do you want to reuse it? I'm going to say yes. Dates have been detected as date columns. Order total, I'm going to say this will be decimal. Type of warranty. Now, if you remember on my PDF, there were 3 radio buttons over here. Now this did a good job. It detected all of those values. All I have to do is just click save. It will be generated. And for purchase source, again, it extracted the 2 radio button values out. And I'm going to create a pick list for that as well. Rest of it looks good to me. If I go to show line breaks, you can see that the layout is preserved. In this case, this row has 3 columns. The other row has 2 columns. The text area is in its row by itself. So very important feature that it's not rearranging the layout for you. It will maintain the layout, which is what your business users want. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Next, it is asking me what kind of name I want to give to the data entity. I'm going to go with the suggested name and the primary key field would be request number. Go ahead and click next. Next, it is asking me, there are two human steps in my process. Do I want to generate form for both of them? And typically that's what you would want to do. But in my case, I'm going to disable it for approval step because later on I'm going to show you some advanced cloning activities. Finally, it is asking me, do I want to create any kind of miscellaneous artifacts for my application? Whether I want to define some application level access token or application level connection to document repository, style sheets, app level groups or roles, images, JavaScript. I'm going to leave it as is. Finally, it is asking me to secure my application. Now you're looking at the third layer of security, the application layer. So I'm going to say give developer user permission to change the design of this application. Later on, we are going to bring in some collaboration. So we'll bring in developer user. Go ahead and click next. And now it takes all of that information and it starts generating everything for me. It will generate a data entity behind the scene. It will create the process model. It will generate the form as well. This process takes anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. Now I'm being redirected to the process model homepage. And as you can see, here is the process model. I can always move some of the connectors according to my liking. For example, I want to increase the length of this swim lane. I can always go ahead and do that as well. I'll move some of these activities below. I'll select multiple of them, move it, and maybe move the connector. Okay, so I'm happy with the connectors. Now you see some of them are showing this warning sign because they are not configured yet. Some properties are still missing. I can go in and rename my swim lanes. The last one I'm going to call as refund. Let's go ahead and click save. Now, process modeler is the first core pillar of AgilePoint. Typically, and products which says that they are process modeler, they would support sequential and state machines as the design pattern for the process. AgilePoint has support for more than 18 plus design patterns, the likes of sequential, state machine, hierarchical, rollback, skip, milestone based patterns. They are all supported. The second core pillar of AgilePoint is the extent of integration. As I mentioned, there are more than 120 different line of business systems which are supported out of the box with more than 1200 of these process actions which are available. So the likes of OCR vendors, AWS services, Microsoft services, various RPA providers like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Power Automate, various machine learning providers, Kafka, various document repository providers, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, various digital signature providers, ERP provider, various AI providers, Google, AWS, Azure, Jira. So the list goes on and on, ERP providers, CRM providers. Now, for those of you who do not find your connector in here, you can always use the generic protocol-based connectors. There are protocol-based connectors for gRPC, OData, REST, WCF, and web service, which are available in the platform as well. And we provide low-code SDK where you can create your own connectors and start showing up in the menu option over here. Now, what I'm going to do is before I start designing my form, I'm going to quickly go in and show you the data entity which got generated. So as you can see, product warranty claim entity got generated. I'm going to go ahead and add an additional field. I can select the field type. I'm going to keep it as text. It will be called approval decision. I'm going to capture the approval decision as part of my entity. I'll say make it visible on data tab, enable data tracking, and go ahead and click save. Lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to permissions and give my developer user permission for this entity as well. And go ahead and click save. Let's close the data entity. Now I'm back to my process modeler over here. And if I look at the data source, it's a truly hybrid data source. So there are few controls available under forms. It generated a data source or data entity for me. Those are listed over here. If I go to system data, it is showing me all the system tokens which I can use. And remember, I imported few environment variables. They are available to me as well. Now I can always go to data source and add additional data sources. I can click on the plus button over here. I can say, for example, I want to bring in SharePoint. I can give it a name. I can say connect to SharePoint using a connection my IT has defined for me. It will do a dynamic discovery. It will tell me these are the site collections available. I'll go against root site. And here are the list and libraries available. I can specify my data synchronization rules. I can also specify which fields are available. In my case, I'm not going to do it from here. I'm going to add these on the fly. So I'm going to close these. But I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to define 3 process variables, which I'm going to use for my process calculations. These will be fields which are not visible on the UI. So I'm going to call it warranty decision. I can give it a data type. I'm going to leave it as string. The next element would be called warranty label. It will be string. And the third one would be called probability. And this one would be a decimal. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Okay, let's minimize this. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it. And next we will start working on these activities. So I'm going to open the first form activity. And as you can see, there is a form which is already generated. I'm going to put it in edit mode. And what you see on the screen is an already generated form. Now, before I show you the form features, as you can see, the layout is exactly matching the PDF. It has this row with 3 controls, this row with 2 controls, this row has spanned across all 3 columns, and I've broken it down into tabs, and the whole logic is preserved for me. Now, before I start making few changes to this form, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the form designer. So if I go to something like form settings, I can specify form title. I can specify the label positions, the tab ordering. I can specify things like background images, colors, style sheets. I can enable multiple actions. So I can say show a print and a save as PDF button. It is a WYSIWYG designer. So as you can see, it is showing me these buttons are added. I can always move them if I wanted. And I can always enable use of multiple languages as well. That's what we are going to do today, because I'm going to bring in Japanese language later on. Now, typically a form designer is judged based on the number of controls it provides out of the box. A typical form designer would have anywhere from 30 to 40 controls. AgilePoint has more than 75 controls available out of the box. So under the common toolbox, you will see the likes of text box, text area, drop downs, radio buttons, file upload controls, user list, rich text controls. If I go to advanced, you can see more purpose-built ones with validation checks like phone, email, postal code, social security, credit cards, star ratings, data grids, captcha, and VOEM Telerik as well. Now in my case, the form is already generated because of GenAI, and it is already data bound to all my backend data source. So the data sync will automatically happen. But I'm going to make few changes. Now I could have kept it as is. I could have published it just to replicate whatever was there in the PDF, but I want to add more logic. I want to make it more user friendly, because PDF is a static document, but I can start adding some dynamic rules and then make it more user friendly in this case. So I'm going to go to phone control, and I'm going to go ahead and say change this to a number dialed in US. And as soon as I do that, you see there is a pencil icon which is showing up. This means this change is currently local to this form, but AgilePoint's form designer promotes reusable elements. So what I can do is I can say promote this to library. And the advantage of this is now if this control is used in 10 other forms in the same application, the other 10 forms will automatically inherit this change. I don't have to open all those 10 forms one by one and make the change. A very useful feature. Now I'm happy with rest of the controls on this particular tab. I'm going to add one more tab over here called location. And I'm going to move this up in the middle. I can specify my rules to show and hide this section as well. In my case, I'm going to specify navigation style. I'll say user can jump from first tab to third tab. Rest of the settings I'm going to leave as is. I'm going to pick a navigation style. It could be chevron style, block style, line style, where my uh, progress bar would be shown, where the navigation buttons would be shown, and what are the various colors. I'm going to go with default, which is line style. That's what I like for my environment right now. If I go to location, I'm going to add a map control. Let's call it map. I'm going to go to configure. I'm going to say use this Google Map token and set the zoom level to 6. It is asking me to allow usage of map location services, so I'm going to do that. But map needs more space, so I can easily drag and drop and resize it. I don't have to write lengthy CSS for doing these kind of things. Next, I'm going to add a geolocation control to capture latitude and longitude in this case. I'm going to say whenever I move within 100 meters of the current location, capture the new location and feed it to the map. So I'm done with this tab as well. And finally, I'm going to go to order detail tab. Now I'm going to start making few changes here. If you see, my PDF has product name as a text box, but I want to change it. I can always do that so that it's a better user experience. User should not make any data entry errors. So I'm going to change it to a drop down. Now, since I said this is a drop down, I'm going to go ahead and configure it. I'm going to say look up your product catalog from an external data source. Enable sorting. My external data source in this case is SharePoint. So I'm going to go ahead and select SharePoint. Just like process level, at form level as well, we support a whole lot of native integration to different underlying systems. And I'm going to go ahead and say next. Now, just in case you're wondering how my product catalog looks like, here is a SharePoint list. It has a name field and then the product code field. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Connect to SharePoint. Give it a name. This will be of type name value pair. I'm going to say connect to root site in SharePoint. There's a list called mobile glass product list. Use that. For name, use product name. For value, use product code. I can specify a where clause. I'm going to skip it. I can test my query to see all records are coming back. And they seem to be coming back. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. I'm going to add some dynamic behavior to the form as well. It makes no sense for the user to enter order date, warranty expiry date, order total, because as soon as he enters order number and product name, I should be able to look it up from backend system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mark order date as disable and promote this change to library. I'm going to do the same thing for warranty expiry date. I'm going to mark it as disable. And I'll promote this to library as well. And for order total, I'm going to say this will be read only. Promote it to library. And I'm going to say dealer name. It doesn't make sense to show dealer name unless a dealer option has been selected. So I'm going to mark this as hidden by default. And I'm going to show it based on a rule later on. Next, I'm going to add a couple of calculation fields over here. So I'm going to say, let's add a formula control to calculate the days remaining in the current warranty. So I'm going to call it warranty days remaining, and I can build my formula. Now it has a very comprehensive formula builder as well. It comes with a lot of these templates. I can always select it. I don't have to know how to write JavaScript or whatever for these things. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to calculate difference in terms of days. The first parameter would be now, which is an inbuilt token. And for the second parameter, I'm going to replace it with the warranty expiry date. I can always validate it, looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and click close. Now I also want to add logic to my form that a user should not be able to submit this refund request again and again. If it is already processed, it doesn't make sense to allow user to submit it. So I'm going to add a text box over here. Let's call it order status. And I'm going to mark it as read only. Now I have 5 read-only controls. I want to fetch values of this from a backend order management system. In my case, the order management system is in Salesforce. There are 4 records right now. First 3 are in process status and the last one is in refunded status, A004. I'm going to use this. I'm going to go ahead and say do an auto lookup. Let's call it get order details. Go and define the lookup. This time I'm going to go against Salesforce, my second data source. Connect to Salesforce, give it a name. This time it will be of type multiple columns. For entity, I can see which entities I have permission to. In my case, I want to go against mobile screen order entity. It does a dynamic discovery of all the columns available within Salesforce. I'm going to say I'm not interested in rest of them. All I'm interested in is order date and warranty date. I'm going to do a quick mapping to these. So the values being retrieved are stored back in my data source. I'm going to say order date to order date, warranty expiry date to warranty expiry date. I'm going to select order total and type of warranty, map those as well. And the last one I'm interested in is order status, which is a form only field for me. So I'm going to, remember I added a read only field. So I'm going to go ahead and map it. Okay, next I'm going to define my where clause. Right now you can see it is empty. I'm going to go ahead and say add where name of the record. This is a Salesforce convention where the primary key field is called name is equal to order number. That's what I had as the primary key. I can say where email is matches the email ID, so user can see only his records, and where product code is equal to whatever value is in the product name field. Okay, so my lookup has been configured. If I was an advanced developer, I can always go ahead and write this query as well. I'm going to stick to citizen developer experience. I have precise control over when this lookup would be triggered or whenever one of the related field value changes or on form load. This is very important because I don't want to trigger these lookups unnecessarily. They are very expensive and as well as affects form performance as well. So you want to trigger it at the right moment. You have complete control over that. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now, next, I'm going to add a label control to show an error message in case somebody has already got the refund and is trying to resubmit it again and again. So I'm going to say warranty claim has already been processed, and because it is important, I'm going to mark it as 20 bold and in red color. And I'm going to make it hidden by default, only show up when the error is occurring, and going to span it across 2 columns now. Now I'm going to bring in few rules. Before I do that, I'm going to configure my file upload control, which is the last control remaining. I'm going to tie it to backend repository. So I'm going to go ahead and say, here are the repositories available. More than 15 different repositories are supported out of the box. I'm going to go ahead and say SharePoint is my repository. Call the damage photos, connect to SharePoint, connect to root site. There's a library called warranty claim document. There are various folders available. I'm going to say store it in the damage folder. I can always create additional folders as well, and I can specify the file naming conflict, how it will be handled. So I'm going to go ahead and say finish. Now I can specify what kind of actions are allowed, whether I can view, update, or download files at this step, if there is any file extension restrictions, or how many files can be uploaded. I'll just go with default. Lastly, I'm going to bring in some rules. So I'm going to say if purchase source is equal to dealer, then only show the dealer name control, and execute this at form load as well. Go ahead, click OK. And the second rule I'm going to bring in is if order status is equal to refunded, then no point showing issue description. So hide it, hide the file upload control and show the error message control. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So I'm done with my changes right now. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And let's preview this form. So I don't have to publish it out. I can always test my form logic right within my browser without having to publish it. I'm going to just go ahead and say, let's pick a name, John Smith. Email is important in this case because that's what is going to be used in the where clause. So I'm going to go to my scratchpad. It's bringing down the location and latitude, longitude as well. And I'm going to select an order number in this case, a product name. And as soon as I do that, my backend system is now sending me back the values, order date, warranty date, order total, and it has calculated the warranty remaining days as well. And if I select dealer, the dealer name starts showing up. So the logic seems to be working. If I select the order which has already been refunded, I can see that the other two controls were hidden and I see the error message in this case. So great, my logic is working. I can always click on Analyze button and see how my form is performing. I can identify any bottlenecks, what kind of API calls are being made, if there are any lookups which are running slow, or maybe while rendering the form, which controls are rendering slow. So if I drill down, I can see that the date control is my most expensive control in this case. So very comprehensive form performance analyzer available. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now, before I leave the form designer area, I can always go in and add my own custom CSS or JavaScript. If I don't know how to add the JavaScript, I can always go in and ask Arya. So if I go back to my scratchpad over here, I can say, how do I read the field value of a field using JavaScript? And it will generate the source code for me, which I can just copy and paste along with all the instructions. It is generating that thing for me. I'm going to close this. Now, similarly, I can go to rules builder. I can define even form level rules. Till now, you saw me define control level rules, but I can tie it to form events like load before submit, validation on submit, or after submit. These rules can go very complex. It can be nested rules. You can chain them together as well. I'm going to bring up translator. I'm going to select my Japanese language in this case. On the left hand side, you see my English form. Right hand side, it is the translated text. I can send it to a translation house to translate it, or just use AgilePoint's GenAI. So now my entire form controls are translated in Japanese as well. I can preview it if I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Finally, I'm going to show you the responsive form designer as well. So everything being designed is responsive in nature. I can see how it would look like in tablet, landscape and portrait, as well as phone, landscape and portrait mode. Now I can always move things around if I wanted, but I'm going to stick with whatever is generated. Let's go ahead and do a save and check-in. Close this dialog. Now, next I should be configuring the SOAP activity. Now I'm going to simulate a case where I don't know how to configure it, and I'm going to bring in a developer later on. Now, I could always ask Arya as well. At this point of time, I can say, Arya, how do I configure the WCF activity? Again, it is trained on AgilePoint knowledge base as well as all the frequently used questions. So you can see it gives me the step-by-step instructions on how do I configure this activity with the reference article as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this out. I'm going to say let developer configure it later on. Now I'm going to open my condition. So as you remember, BPM and image, I was able to extract all of this information, but I have to still define the actual condition behind it. So I'm going to say if warranty decision coming back from SOAP service is equal to approved, And I can add additional conditions if I want it. It can be nested as well, but I'm going to stick with one. Go the approval route. If warranty decision is equal to rejected, go the rejection route. Else go the pending route. Next, I'm going to start configuring the second human step. Now I could select the existing form and use it, or I can define a new one. I'm going to define a new one. Let's call it approval. I can use existing form as a starting point. I spent all my time setting up my first form. I can just use that as the starting point. The entire layout and all my changes would be copied over. Now I can always open bulk edit mode, start making changes, removing controls, mark them as read only. I'm going to leave it as is, but I'm going to add a new section called approval, and I'm going to make this default so that user doesn't have to tap through rest of the sections. And I'm going to add a radio button over here. Let's call it approval decision. This will be required. It will be horizontally oriented, and this will be inline list. So I'm going to define two inline options called approved and rejected. Okay. Finally, I'm going to add a comments control to capture any comments. Let's call it comments. It has comments history enabled already. Now, I want to show it in 3 columns. I'm going to span it. I don't have to write any lengthy CSS for doing this kind of adjustment. I can always go in and do that. And for the sake of it, I'm going to add one rule over here as well. I'm going to say if approval decision is equal to rejected, maybe make comments mandatory. Let's execute it on form load as well. I can quickly check my form logic. So now approval is my default tab. As you can see, if I select it approved, it is not mandatory. If I select rejected, it became mandatory. So my logic is working. I'm going to go ahead and click save and check in. Now I spent all the time building my first form, but this or configuring it. The form was actually built with GenAI. I just configured few things. On the second form, I didn't have to do anything. I just reused the layout and just made some minor changes over here. So just in a matter of a couple of minutes, you saw the second form is already done. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Enable offline for this. Next, I'm going to specify who's going to work on it. It can be a group. It can be assigned to a role. It could be assigned to users or variables as well. In my case, I'm going to assign it to one of the system tokens called process initiator so that you don't have to see me log in and log out. I can even automatically detect the manager of this user as well. I'm going to stick to process initiator. I can define various notification templates. I can say notify user of this task based on email or Microsoft Teams or SMS so that they can work off those channels. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. Let's configure the second condition. I'm going to open this and say if approval decision value is equal to approved, go the approval route, else go the rejection route. Next, we are going to bring in an email template, and I'm going to use GenAI to generate the email template. I can select on an already existing template or a global email template. In my case, I'm going to define one. So I'm going to say this will be called rejection email. The email should be sent to the person whose email ID is available in the data source. As far as content is concerned, it supports both textual emails and HTML emails. I'm going to generate one using AI. I'm going to give it my intent. I'm going to say generate a mobile tempered glass warranty claim rejection notification. And the GenAI does a pretty decent job at it. You see, it said, we regret to inform you that your mobile tempered glass warranty claim has been rejected. and for various reasons. And you can see some placeholder controls are there. I can always replace it with whatever values are there in my process schema. So I can say dear variable name, there's a rejection reason listed over here. Remember, I have the comments control mandatory for rejection reason, so I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop the rejection reason. I can always remove certain sections if I don't want it. In this case, I'm going to say, let's remove some of this. Finally, if you see, there are the options to contact the customer support through email or phone. Remember, I have some global data variables which I had created. So I'm going to say you can be contacted at this email ID and this phone number. So I'm going to replace those two tokens. And I can go in and go ahead and change the company name as well. That's the last change. So I'm going to say replace the company name token and go ahead and click finish. Now before I finish, I'll do one thing. I'm going to add support for different languages in this email. So a user, if his language preference is set to Japanese, should not receive an email in English. AgilePoint has excellent support again for that. So if, for example, I say I have audience in Japan as well, can you translate this in Japanese? And I can do it using AI as well. I spent all the time setting up my primary email in my default language, and I just hit the translate button and everything is carried over and translated in Japanese as well. So very useful feature. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, finish. I'm going to quickly configure remaining system activities. So this one has to go back and update the primary record with the approval decision. So there's a custom entity called product warranty claim. I already have the record ID of the record which I wanted to update. So I'm going to map the record ID. For request mapping, all I want to update back is the approval decision. So approval left hand side, what you see is the AgilePoint process and form schema. Right hand side is my entity schema. You can see there is a field called approval decision on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick mapping. That's it. I'm done with this activity. Next, I'm going to insert a record. If the refund request has been approved, I want to insert a record in disbursed claim table so that the backend payment system can pick it up. So I can go ahead and say custom entity disbursed claim. I can always click on auto map and system will intelligently map all the required fields where the names are matching. I'm going to go ahead. You can always delete it. I don't want to map the ID field. And go ahead and click finish. Next, I'm going to set the form variable called order status to refunded if it has been refunded so that this can be pushed back to the order management system. So I'm going to go in and say there is a field called status. Set this value to refunded. Let's validate it. Everything looks good. Lastly, I'm going to go back to Salesforce and update the order status. Connect to Salesforce. Select the entity. In our case, that's the mobile screen order. Now I can specify a custom where clause as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say which field do I want to push back. So I'm going to say there is a field called order status. Again, on the right hand side, you see the Salesforce schema. I'm going to say map AgilePoint variable back into order status on the Salesforce side of things. And I'm going to build a custom where clause in this case. I'm going to say where name of the record is equal to order number, which is my primary key field in Salesforce. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. Finally, I'm going to configure the approval email notification as well, just like I did for rejection email. So I'm going to say add an email. This should be sent to the person whose email ID is in the data source. For content, I'm going to say generate using AI. I'm going to copy the same prompt over here, but instead of rejection, I'm going to say approval. Go ahead and click OK. It contacts AgilePoint GenAI endpoint and it would generate the text for me. And it does a good job. It is now saying we are pleased to inform that your claim has been approved. Now I'm going to leave it as is. You have already seen me change the system tokens in past. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK and finish. Okay, so I'm done with my changes. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And I'm going to go ahead and validate it. And it should fail because I have not configured the check warranty activity yet, the SOAP activity. And as you can see, it is complaining me about that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in some collaboration. So I'm going to say, let's ask for help. So I'm going to go ahead and put this message, tag my developer user, and go ahead and click submit. Now it shows me a word style commenting experience. I can resolve it, reply back to it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and close, save and check in. Now there's a comprehensive version control system within AgilePoint. I'm going to go ahead and check in my changes so that my developer can see those changes. Now I'm going to log out as citizen developer and I'm going to log in as my developer user. So I'm going to say this is the developer username. And for password, I'm going to go back to my mailbox, go to the developer user mail, and I'm going to copy it out. Let's go ahead and click sign in. Now, as you can see, I have few more permissions. I have access to a few modules more than previously, but I'm going to go ahead and say change password first because I want to use this to log into my mobile device later on. So I'll type something which I can remember. Save. I'm going to re-log in now. And go ahead and click sign in. Okay, so I'm in my environment now as a developer. I'm going to go to App Builder, go to All Apps. I can see the app. By the way, I've also received a notification with that comment which was put. So as you can see, I was notified that somebody is asking for help. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this model in edit mode. If I go to comments, I can see the comment which has been put by citizen developer for me. I'm going to go ahead and configure the SOAP activity, though it was pretty straightforward. Even citizen developer could have done it. But just to simulate the case, I'm going to go ahead and say connect to WCF service. It does an auto discovery of what web methods are available. Get warranty status. And I'm going to do a simple mapping. As I said, was pretty straightforward. And I'm going to say map order number to order number, product name to product name, purchase source to purchase source, type of warranty to type of warranty, and type of damage to type of damage. And for product age, I'm going to go to form fields. There's a calculated field which I created, which was the formula field. I'm going to map it to the product age. And in response, whatever it sends me back, I'm going to map it back to warranty decision. Okay, so the changes look good to me. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. Let's save our changes. This time, if I click on validate, it should succeed. Okay, now I can go back to my comments history over here. I can mark, either reply back or I can mark it as resolved. I'm going to mark it as resolved for now. Let's go ahead and do a save and check-in. And my app is now ready, so I'm going to go ahead and publish it. First version of this app is getting published. Now I can launch it from here, notify other people. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some landing page experiences as well. So I'm going to go to Page Builder. Now out of the box, it already comes with few templates which I can use as a starting point, or I can create one from scratch. Click Save. Says add a row. I can add more columns as well. If I click on add widgets, this time instead of forms, it is going to show me more of like website page kind of widgets, right? Something like buttons, e-forms, headings, hyperlinks, rich text, raw HTML. I can even embed work center. Various media control types like audio, embed, image carousel, various card layouts, various page layouts, and you can embed reports as well, which we'll see later on. Though you see around 23 widgets which are listed over here, think of it like unlimited widgets, because one of the widgets is called eForms, and using the eForm widget designer, I can create any widget of my choice. So for example, if my announcements are stored in SAP, I can create an announcement widget which is bringing down data from SAP and is embedded within the page itself. Now, in interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the root menu over here. I'm going to import the page which my graphic designer has already created for me. It will import it along with all the dependencies. And if I drill down, I can see the page called Waxo Mobile. I'll go ahead and publish this out. I can set it as a home page if I wanted as well. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and look at permissions. Now you're looking at the fourth layer of security. This is the page level security. I can always control who are the owners of this page, who are the designers who can view this page. I can go in and say, give permission to citizen developer. I can do a quick preview of this page. And if you remember the vanilla home screen right at the beginning, from that, now my entire experience has changed. I have a totally custom menu. AgilePoint menu has been collapsed under one category. There's an image carousel which is here. There are a few buttons, infographics, few card layouts, product catalog. They're all listed over here. If I scroll up, I'm going to initiate an instance of my application. So I'm going to say submit a warranty claim. Let's say this is John Smith. For email ID, I'm going to go back to my scratchpad and copy it from there. Address, San Jose, California. Location is captured. For order detail, I'm going to select order number 1. Here is the product. Its values are all being retrieved. I'm going to say it has got scratched. For dealer, I bought it from dealer, so a dealer name is showing up. I'm going to go ahead and pick an issue description. I'm going to attach an image of the scratch phone. Now it has been uploaded. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Now if I go to my work center module in this case and go to tasks, you'll see there is a process which is already running. There are few actions I can take on it, like open task, reassign task, cancel task based on my permissions. I'm going to open the process viewer. I'll open it in a new window so that you can see it better. You can see a form was submitted, a SOAP endpoint was called, and right now it is sitting at an approval step. Now we are going to approve this of a mobile device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my user profile so that I can bring up the QR code, and I'm going to try to reflect my mobile device on the screen. Okay, so my phone is now reflected on the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly say, scan the QR code. So I don't have to enter any URLs as such. And now I'm going to enter my username. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in. I'm going to accept the terms and condition. I'm going to skip the task planner for now. And as you can see right now, I have the approval task sitting in my mobile device task list. I can always click on it and look at the form. So it's bringing up the form, I can always view it in both portrait as well as landscape mode. Now I'm going to go ahead and click the back button right now. Before I work on the task, I'm going to show you a few options. You can always go to My Apps. You can look at all the new requests which you can raise. So you can see I have two applications assigned to me. If I go to home page, I can see a task summary. I can put VIP processes on watch list. I see my frequently used applications. If I'm a manager, I can manage my team's tasks as well. And then there is an outbox over here, which will be used in case of offline forms. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the process viewer in the background so that you can see how the process is progressing as I start completing the task. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is you see there is an amber icon which is over here. It tells me this can be taken offline. So I'm going to take it offline. Now this form has been downloaded for offline access. So in this case, I'm downloading the task form. The same thing can be done for the new request form as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Home tab and I'm going to run my app in offline mode. So as you can see, now I'm not connected to AgilePoint server anymore. But if I go to task list, I still have the approval task sitting. Now I might be on a flight or something. I can go in, click on it. It says, okay, allow location access. I'm going to go ahead and say approve. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. At this point of time, if I go to outbox, you can see a task is sitting in the outbox. I've already completed it. It is waiting for me to come online. Now, assuming I come online, and I'm going to go ahead and say run it in online mode. In next few minutes, it would pick it up, but I'm going to go ahead and just click sync now for now to save time. So as you can see, the process has started executing and it went ahead and updated all those backend systems. So if we go in and look at, say, a data entity, product warranty claim, and if I go to data, scroll all the way to the right, you can see the approval decision has been updated. Similarly, if I go to disburse claim, and if I go to data, a new record has been inserted. And if I go to Salesforce and refresh it, the first record has been marked as refunded. So my logic seems to be all working now. I can come back to this environment. Now it is time to package this application so that it can be moved to a different environment. Now I can go to App Builder. I can go to Package, New Package. I'm going to give it a name. Add the contents to package. So I'm going to say add an app. It will automatically detect all the related apps as well as dependencies for me, so I don't miss any file. And I'm going to add one page as well, Waxo Mobile. Again, for page, it will detect all the dependencies and add it. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. So it's just as simple as doing that. Now I have various options of moving this. I can select this package. I can export it manually and import it with one click in the target environment. You can always put additional instructions as well. Or maybe I have a CI/CD pipeline which already exists, which I can use to integrate it with AgilePoint. The same functionality is exposed through API. Or if you remember, we added an app earlier from the App Store called Package Deployment app. You can have an AgilePoint app which goes through approvals to auto deploy this app to the target environment. So you can use any one of those. Now, in interest of time, I'm going to skip that step. I'm going to go ahead and say, go to App Builder. And we will start making few changes now. So I'm going to go to All Apps. Now, at this point of time, I'm going to import a child application which will be used to collect feedback from the customer. So I'm going to upload it. My other department has already created it. It does a dependency check for me. I'm going to go ahead and say import. Let's see, this process is very simple process. Let's see the logic. Now, in the original process, the primary process, I had made Now, in the primary process, we made customer log into the system and submit the warranty claim. But while getting the feedback, I don't want to trouble him. Getting the feedback should be very seamless. So I'm going to send him an email as an anonymous link where he can click and provide the feedback without having to log into the system. So I'm going to use anonymous form capability for this. And I'm going to show you how to configure it. I'm going to delete the existing configuration and let's create it again. I'm going to select an access token. This has an account which will be used as a service account to make any API calls on behalf of the user. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and validate the credentials. I can always pass additional parameters. I can set up firewall rules. I can even set up advanced security. This is a form which is going outside my organization boundaries. I can restrict which API calls can be made, or even enable multi-factor authentication. You guys have seen me do that in previous briefings, so I'm going to skip that and click generate. A token has been generated. I'm going to go ahead and update my email template to use that token. So if I go to content, this is an HTML email. I'm going to go ahead and say, here is the new link, and go ahead and click finish. Next, it is going to contact an AI agent. Now we are bringing in our first AI agent, which is a text-based agent. Now in this case, it is an inline agent. I put it within the process logic itself. And what it is going to do is I'm going to connect to OpenAI, take the customer feedback. It will analyze the customer feedback based on the instructions I have provided and suggest me what kind of actions should be taken. So as you can see, I have connected to OpenAI. I selected the model which I prefer to use out of the list of models. If I go to system instructions, it's not just a general ChatGPT kind of an experience. You can specify what kind of skill set this LLM agent should have. So in this case, I have set a goal. Your primary goal is to analyze customer feedback and create a positive, transparent, and supportive response. If I go to skills, I've given it a skill. You are a professional feedback assistant at Waxoing. If you go to input, I have specified that what kind of parameters would be passed to you. A star rating would be passed to you where 1 is bad and 5 is excellent. And then what kind of output format do I expect to get back? And I've given detailed instructions of what kind of things should be kept in mind while doing the analysis. Now, based on whatever value is coming back from LLM, I'm going to bring in some logic. So I'm going to say, if you look at the rule over here, if LLM detected it as a negative sentiment and suggested to escalate it, we are going to bring in the customer service representative to work on it. I'm going to go ahead and do a save and check-in and publish this process. Let's close this. I'm going to go back to my primary application, which is warranty claim process, and we are going to make 4 small changes to this application. First, I'm going to make a change to the form itself. Now I'm going to give user an option that instead of asking for a refund, he can ask for a replacement as well. So I'm going to go in and say, add a radio button. Let's call it action requested. This is required. It could be refund, or I can ask for replace. That's it. That's the change I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and say save and check in. The next change I want to bring in is I want to bring in the process logic to handle the replacement request. So I'm going to add a swim lane. Let's call this replace. Now, AgilePoint is a self-learning system, so it can suggest me what are the next best actions. So I'm going to say add a condition. Let's call it check action. I can ask for a refund or a replacement are the two possible outcomes. And in this case, I'm going to say if action requested is equal to refund, go the refund route, else go the replacement route. I still want to update Salesforce back, so I'm going to go ahead and map it. And I'm going to bring in another create record activity in this case. Let's call it replacement request. This will be a custom entity as well. The table name is replace product. And just like previously, we are going to do an auto map. I'm going to remove mapping for the ID field. Let it generate the ID field in the backend. I can move the connector around anytime. So I'm going to say, let's move it a little bit. Looks better. Next, I'm going to put in a set process variable activity again. I'm going to give it a name. This time, the value of the variable order status would be set to replaced. Let's verify if everything looks good. It looks good. So this change is done as well. Now I'm going to make a third change. I'm going to consume the child process I imported just a few minutes back. So I'm going to say when everything is done, collect feedback. Consume a process which is defined in a different application. We have various options listed over there. I can see this is the process. Always consume the latest version of that process. I can consume a specific version if I wanted. Specify the naming conventions. I'm going to go with default. And how do I want to share data? Do I want to share the entire data, copy the data? But this process might be belonging to a different department. I might not want to share the whole data from a data privacy perspective. So I can say all I'm interested in passing is email and maybe the first name. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish. So the three changes are done now. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now I'm going to bring in another AI agent. This time this AI agent will be a governing style AI agent. It will be sitting at the top and governing how the process is executed without making my process logic complex. So it will take autonomous decision to see if this step, instead of going to a human, it should be auto approved. Now making that kind of a decision would need some kind of a machine learning model to sit behind it, and creating a machine learning model for some organization can be quite daunting because there are few hurdles. You have to collect data which is cleansed and ready for the training of machine learning model, and then you have to have the skill set of for training the machine learning model itself. Now, AgilePoint has made it easier. We provide something called as Machine Learning Advisor. Right now, it works with Amazon SageMaker. Pretty soon, it will be working with Azure as well. So as you can see, it will walk me through the process of collecting all the data and passing it to the machine learning platform, as well as it will also let me generate automatically a machine learning model as well. So on the first step, it is telling me what kind of process instances do I want to consider? Only the completed ones? I'll say yes, all versions. And it is suggesting me there are few points which can benefit from machine learning. One of them being check approval. So the decision points. I can always add additional ones if I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to do autonomous decision making on approvals. So let's select that. The field to predict is approval decision. Now, this field will be dependent on purchase source, type of warranty, order total, maybe warranty expiry date, type of damage, product name. These are the parameters which are driving the decision making. So I'm going to select that. Go ahead and click next. Now it is going to ask me if I want to add any more filters. Maybe I want to run this only on records where amount is greater than $30. I can select that. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now in my environment, I only ran this once right now in front of you guys. So there is only one record. Typically you would wait for at least to have 200, 300 records before you start training an AI model. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Because this is going against AWS SageMaker, it is asking me to connect to AWS, select a bucket where this data would be saved. So I'm going to go ahead and click the bucket name, give it a file name prefix. Now I can specify how that 75% of the data would be used to train the machine learning model and 25% for testing. Now I might be only interested in providing the data. They already have customer already has the AI team which can create the model. You can always disable generating the model and say automatically ship the data every 30 days and save it in AWS. Or maybe I want to generate the AI model. I don't have an AI team. So I can always go in and say generate the AI model for me as well. Any work which is done by the AI model, save the label to the label field which I had created and probability to probability. Click next. Again, connect to AWS, give model a name. I can protect it as with AWS security as well. And finally, again, as I said, you can say auto retrain this AI model every 30 days with the new data being collected, or if the data set has grown by say 10% or maybe 100 records. Now I'm going to close this because I've already generated the model. This process can take few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to bring in my next AI agent. Now, if I go to Amazon SageMaker, there are various AI agents listed over there just for SageMaker, and I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop, give it a name. Now I'm going to save it for a minute over here. And as you can see, this is not connected within the process flow. It is sitting outside. This is a governing kind of an AI agent. We call it AI control tower, which will sit at the top of the process logic. So without making your process logic very complex, it is sitting over there and monitoring how things are progressing. So it could even sit on top of your existing processes, which you might have been running for years, and your business team doesn't want to touch the existing process. Your AI team can always come in and inject this at the top without disturbing the regular business logic. So I'm going to go ahead and make some autonomous decisions based on this. So I'm going to say, let's click next. Add a model. I can add multiple of these, rename them. I'm going to leave it as is for now. Connect to SageMaker. Here are the various models which are available, AI models. I'm going to select one. I can specify the triggering event. Now, this is very important. AI still happens to be an expensive thing, and running all these inferences can cost a lot for companies. Now, AgilePoint is mindful of customers' wallet as well, and using this AI control tower, you have precise control over when this agent would be triggered or AI inference would be triggered. Instead of if I would have put it in line, it would have been triggered every time. So now in this case, I'm going to say only trigger when approval activity is hit. I can even set further condition that only if amount is greater than say $30. Next, I'm going to specify my input. Now Amazon SageMaker supports CSV and JSON as input format. I'm going to go ahead and say configure it in a grid based view. Now Amazon SageMaker doesn't have a discovery service. This is specific to Amazon SageMaker, where they don't have a discovery service for getting the input parameter structure from a machine learning model. Other machine learning platforms like Azure does that. But I'm going to go ahead and say import. I'm going to go to SageMaker. My AI developer would have given me the list of parameters it is expecting, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And here are the parameters. I'm going to just do a quick mapping with AgilePoint schema. I'm going to say map city to city, state code to state code, zip code to zip code, product, type of damage for The next field, I'm going to drag and drop the formula field, type of warranty to type of warranty, and purchase source to purchase source. Okay, so I'm done with my mapping. I'll minimize this. Go to response. Now for response, it does give me the structure, so I can load it in the schema mapper. So I'm going to map label to label, probability to probability. And finally, I can define my actions. I can define my debug variables. I can define where my exception messages would be stored. But I'm going to go ahead and define a rule. I'm going to say if label coming back from machine learning model says this is not a fraud claim, so it's false, and probability of this not being a fraud claim is greater than 50%, then autonomously approve this task instead of wasting a human's time. So directly jump to the update approval status step and go ahead and click save. So as easy as that, I brought in some AI agent to start automating this decision making. I'm going to go ahead and do a save and check in and publish this change. Now version 1 of my application is being published. I'm going to go ahead and close this dialog. If I go to version history over here, you can see both versions are available. I can always roll it back. I can set the previous version as milestone or current version as milestone, export a particular version, even mark this as the current version and view the dependencies as well. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now I'm going to click on Work Center and consume it from there in this time. Now in my case, the Work Center is pretty empty because it's a new environment. To give you a sense of how a Work Center might look like, I'm going to go to my other browser over here. And as you can see, it gives me a nice little summary of how many tasks are overdue, how many are assigned, how many are in new status, a calendar view, my task planner. I can put VIP processes on watch list, my frequently used apps, my recent tasks, recent requests. If I drill down into my inbox, I can see which tasks are assigned to me. There's a Kanban view. I can move things around. If I'm one of those person who prefers a grid view, I can work off a grid view as well. And then it gives me various views available. So right now I'm seeing my task, but as a manager, I can see my team's task. As a department head, I can see my department's task, my team and sub-team's task. As an application owner, I can manage my application's task as well. Similarly, on the process side, it gets me a bucketed view of what processes are running. I can see process I started, process I worked on, and again for my team as well, I can have different views. If I go to delegations, I can set up my vacation schedules. If I go to statistics, I can see how am I performing across tasks and processes for the current month. And again, there are various views for managers as well. And I can define application specific views as well, custom views. So if you look at over here, I've defined one for one specific application. I can embed these in those page builders if I wanted. I'm going to go back, go to my apps and raise a new request. I'm going to say John Smith for email. Here is the email. Location has been captured. For order detail, this time we'll go with order number 2, edgy tempered glass. It has been scratched. This is premium warranty, so it will decide that somebody has paid extra money upfront for it, so I might auto approve it. Dealer, I'm going to provide a dealer name, and this time I'm going to say replace the product instead of refund. Attach this image. Now there are various parameters which are driving that autonomous decision, one of them being type of warranty, but also the amount and and type of damage. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. If I go to inbox, processes, and bring it up in the runtime visualizer, I'll open it in new tab. You'll see something weird happened over here. It came to approval step, but before it could get completed, it skipped the subsequent steps as well, and directly went for straight through processing. So autonomous approval happened in this particular case and saved this human effort. And as you can see, because I asked for a replacement, it went through the replacement route. And right now it is sitting on the collect feedback step. So I'm going to drill down into my child process. It is right now sitting on the anonymous form step. So if I go to my mailbox in the other browser window, I have received the email. Let's go ahead and click the link. It has carried over the basic information from my parent process to the child process. I'm going to give bad rating. And I'm going to put a comment that I had to contact the support multiple times to get the product replaced. Now the form has been submitted. I'm going to switch back to my other browser window over here, and it starts processing that data through an LLM agent. An LLM agent tells me that this is a negative feedback and it needs escalation. So it now went to the escalation step. So you saw both agent types. One was the governing kind of agent and another one was the text-based agent in this case. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to look at some of the analytics capability. So I'm going to go back to my other environment where I've already run this application few times. Before I show you the how to build a new report, I'm going to just give you a couple of data points. The AgilePoint Analytics Center, it is not limited to just AgilePoint tables. If you have existing Azure SQL, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, PostgreSQL, MySQL, Salesforce, REST API, Snowflake available, you can create report against those data sources as well. And it comes with very comprehensive role-based access control system, fifth layer of security. So if I drill down into any of these and go to permissions, there are literally hundreds of permissions you can control. If I click on role setup, for example, you can control things like whether I see a simple interface for citizen developers or more advanced interface for building my reports, what kind of reports, chart types are available, is all configurable for a particular role. If I go to Analytics Center, I can see the list of reports. So there are around 40 to 50 out of the box reports available. Under Analytics and Operational Intelligence, you'll see the likes of app version history or process effectiveness, process duration, top 10 longest running processes. App portfolio, you will see app portfolio kind of reports. Business activity monitoring, you'll see the likes of application usage report or process instance statuses or user task analysis. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see some security related reports as well, where all the access tokens are used, what data entities are being used in a particular application, various groups and role membership reports. Now the reports can be pretty fancy and drill down kind of reports. So here is an example of a drill down kind of a report. You can drill down, and as I click on it, the corresponding other charts also get changed. You can have stylings in the report as well. Here is an example of a report with CSS. You can create dashboards. There is a dashboard created with multiple report parts which have been added. You can always schedule it to be delivered in your mailbox every Monday morning, for example, and say even export it in various formats which are available, or run it as a slideshow for that matter. And you can always embed these reports in AgilePoint Page Builder. So here is an example of a portal with various pages which have been created using Page Builder, and I have embedded some reports over there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new report from scratch. Let's minimize this a little bit. I know I want to design my report against a table called warranty claim. Now I can always define client-side joins if it doesn't exist on the server side. In my case, I don't need a join, so I'm going to go ahead and click design. The report, I'm going to minimize this a little bit. I'm going to say give this much space to the chart. The first report I'm going to add is a chart. I'm going to say by status, show me distribution by status, where on the x-axis, show me approval decision, on the y-axis, show me request number, and instead of sum of request number, I want to see the count. Right now it is showing me a line chart. I can select this. I can select other chart types: line, column, bar, area, pie, funnel, donut, combination, tree map, heat map, bubble, scatter, waterfall, and sparkline. So a lot of options available. I'm going to select a pie chart. I'll add a border. Pick a theme. Let's select classic theme for now. I'm going to add a legend to it as well. Makes sense in case of pie charts. Add show percentage, show value label, show slice label. I prefer more of a ring style pie chart, so I can change the style. I can set up automatic data refresh. User doesn't have to refresh the reports in this case. And I'm going to disable pagination. Doesn't make sense in case of pie chart. So this looks good. My first report part has been added. I'm going to add one more. Again, I'll reduce this a little bit. I'm going to add a chart. This time, let's call it by products. And I'm going to show a distribution based on product names, which products are returned the most. Again, I'm going to say on x-axis, it's product name, y-axis, request number. This will be count. And this time, let's select a tree map. I'm going to again add a border. Select a theme. We'll select region theme this time. Make it multicolor. Show value labels, slice label. You can set up data refresh and don't use pagination. It's already telling me ID tempered glass is perhaps my most returned product. Go ahead and close this. Lastly, I'm going to add a data grid. There are various chart types which are available. In addition to that, there are forms, gauge kind of reports, grids, maps, and KPIs. I'm going to say I want to add a grid. Let's call it details. Let's give it a little bit more space. I'm going to say add order number, approval decision, email, phone, order total, product name, purchase source, maybe type of damage and type of warranty, and warranty expiry date. Now I can just drag and drop. I can obviously rearrange it as well. I can even make any of these columns drill down. So maybe one of these have to take me to another report or maybe an AgilePoint process viewer. You can always do that. You can say custom URL. You can put URLs with parameters in there as well. For now, I'm going to just copy a static URL, but it could be any URL with parameters. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you see these are all becoming as a link. Now, if I go at the chart level, there are various grid styles supported: vertical, horizontal, pivot, drill down. I'm going to stick with vertical today, but I'm going to give it some styling. I'm going to say give it an alternate row color. Header style looks okay to me, so I'm going to go with default. I can freeze the headers if I wanted while scrolling. I can set up even conditional formatting. So I'm going to say add a rule where if approval decisions value is equal to rejected, select all columns, show it in background color as red, so it grabs attention. So as you can see now, all rejected rows are showing in red. I can enable pagination in case of grid. So this is how easy it is to create a report within the analytics center. Now I can always save it, again export it in various formats as well, or show it in a dashboard. So with this, we come to the end of this demo. As we saw, there are various generative AI capabilities added to the platform. So we generated a process, form, data entity, emails. We translated forms as well as various pick lists, using AI as well. And then we brought in two different kind of agents using those agentic capabilities. We auto approved the task as well as did some test analysis as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea about the new generative AI, agentic AI, as well as developer productivity features added to the platform in the latest release. Thanks a lot for your time.